Hi, I was Fidel Villeneuve, and I was on digital hardcore recordings for about 6 months, till we had a big row about Spandau Ballet, and we were sacked. This is my story. I've been meaning to do this video for over 18 months, and it's not for lack of trying. I've started and given up numerous times already. While I was a fan, I was on the record label itself for a very short amount of time, and I didn't want to look like some sort of big head. Plus, I absolutely hate the record that was released. So much so, Alec Empire had to ring up the 18-year-old me at my mum's house to try and convince me to release it. Digital Hardcore Recordings, or DHR for short, started in the mid-1990s when a group from Berlin, called Atari Teenage Riot, signed a record deal in the UK, but instead of releasing a record, stole the advance money and made their own label instead. While the label was mostly often seen as only about Atari Teenage Riot, DHR released a lot of really interesting and varied groups, such as Shitsuo, Ikeda, Cobra Killer, Bomb 20, Christoph the Babylon, Lolita Storm, just to name but a handful. DHR neither sounded or felt like anything else that had gone before or was happening at the time. It was like punk, hip-hop, rave and noise all happening at once, except nobody really knew what it was, other than very exciting indeed. In the UK, John Peel was championing the label quite a bit on his show, and even putting on a digital hardcore event at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. And it seemed only a matter of time before it took over the world. Except, of course, that didn't happen. Despite us and the label going wrong, and despite some of the things that Alec and Nick have said in interviews on stage or online, I still think DHR was one of the most exciting things going on at the time, and hopefully this video will get you interested enough to try and check some of it out. As for me, I think it's time to try and find out what happened. So I decided to call this guy, Brian, who I made the record with. I'm not sure we came up with any answers, but hopefully it'll give you a flavour of what being on the label was like.
It's poster fantastic, spectacularly well.
Spectacular. I'm glad to hear it, and thank you for agreeing to do this. As you know, someone asked me. That's the thing with us. I don't really know. We're probably not very famous, but then every so often you'll get a message or something from somewhere. And then I thought, well, it'd be nice to document or speak to someone about it, you know. So
I did something the other day. I looked on Discogs because all this time, and I've never owned a copy of this this record. And I looked on Discogs to see how much it was selling for, and I think you can get it for about £2, something like that. And there was 2 comments at the bottom. I can't remember fully what they said, but one of them, the sign-off was, it's important to know that the guys that made this album wore oversized raver pants.
well, we can come on to that, I think. I think that's a very important thing to note. Someone found it in Japan. I don't have a copy of it either. And someone found it in the 100 yen section. So it's about 70 pence.
And then it's nice to know it's, you know, people are paying what it's worth for the for it. Basically, I had been sitting at home playing a game called Music on the PlayStation. A game is a bit far-fetched. It's not really a game. It was like a music production program which was predated Music 2000, which I gather a lot of people used, but it was like a more rudimentary version of. And I've been making uh, music, if you can call it that. I didn't really know what I was doing, um, but it turned out that I was making kind of the worst Gabba songs ever recorded.
I,
Um,
I do
I found that
remember. Yeah, I
in,
remember
in
you
yeah,
played me a Gabba song, and I was very impressed by it. Even and it was on the
I didn't realise
PlayStation.
it was Gabba. Um, I suppose I did have hair at the time, so kind of it wouldn't have had the stigma attached, as it would if I was making Gabba looking like this. But yeah, maybe if I knew it was Gabba, I maybe wouldn't have been making it. I was just trying to make the most obnoxious music I could with the tools that I had, which was a chipped PlayStation.
Yeah, yeah, and then I was getting really into like digital hardcore then, but I didn't know how to make it. And then we sort of tried to learn after because the PlayStation was okay, but then we thought, oh, let's try and get an Akai
Well,
from somewhere. And then I think we
Well,
got
this is the thing. I remember I was told that you were putting a band of sorts together. And I remember we met outside the art gallery after college one day. And I think you listened to these songs. I think it was the first time I'd met you. You put some headphones on, listened to these songs, laughed a lot. And I was like, oh, what does this mean? Turns out that was a positive thing. And I think then said, "Do you want to join a band?" And I was like, "Well, okay, but my instrument is a TV and a PlayStation controller." And that was how we started playing with that band. Was with me with a TV in the corner, having to, and as well when you pressed because it was like a programming tool. Um, so when you actually pressed a sound, it wouldn't actually play in time. So I remember I was having to try and play with you guys, but preempt when the sound was going to come in. So I'd have to hit the button like a few milliseconds early so that these gabba kicks or whatever shit noises we were using would be in time of sorts with the music.
no, it's yeah, I should explain in this band, there was like a live drummer and I was playing guitar and there was a bass player and you were sort of doing things by hand with a huge podium that you'd made out of wood.
Yeah, that was after because we kind of figured out that taking a TV and a PlayStation wasn't going to really cut it. So I remember over the summer holiday between the college years, I got a job unstacking stacks of beans off the back of a trailer via a family friend. And but doing that, I saved up enough money to get an Akai S900 with 1 megabyte of memory.
I remember
Which
that well. We had one song and it had two samples and then we'd run out of memory. And
yeah,
it was a very good song, but we were so like wow, it works. We couldn't believe
but
it.
but then you figured out if you lowered the bit rate of the sample, that meant you could have maybe a third sample. And if you lowered the bit rate even further, you could maybe have a fourth. So we could get up to 4 or 5 really bad quality samples. And you had your Atari ST that you stole from school.
Yeah,
Uh,
allegedly. And then
yeah.
um well, soon after that I think one of the questions later on says what stuff did you use? I had an Akai 1000 and I got that because it was cheap and it had all the outputs at the back. But again, I had to I could never use the full memory. So everything that I did, it was kind of useful that we distorted everything so much because it was only like
Mm.
10,000 hertz, or because that was a funny sampler that only went to 22,000. It wasn't like CD.
Yeah, see, it confused me, the 1000. There was just a lot of buttons. See, around that time, I was using the 2000. But if we go back to the Kill Life stuff, I'm pretty sure most of that was done on that. Do you remember the S20
I,
that you
I,
had?
I do
It was
remember
like,
that.
it's kind of like an early version of an MPC.
Yeah, and it was really good because it had no battery power, but the thing would come out. So whenever we played live, we'd have to hit it on the table to try and get it to come on.
Oh
I
yeah,
remember.
I've heard that.
I'm just going to stop the interview here with a couple of points. Playing live for us was always a bit of a problem because laptop technology then wasn't really that good, and the kind of people that did that, someone like Kid 606, the music was really good, but watching them play live was just like just shining a torch on someone, you know, in the corner. We didn't think that was we wanted something a bit more, and the other acts on the label had to struggle with this problem as well. How do you do this sort of music live without Ableton Live, which didn't exist then, or if it did, it was, yeah, that was a big problem that a lot of us had. I think Lolita Storm had like a ghetto blaster which they mic'd up, and they had like a backing track, and we had a backing track and the samples, and they were very difficult to get in time. I think Ikeda had some sort of Yamaha tracker which looked cool but didn't always work, and Lord knows what Atari Teenage Riot did. But I think that was a problem for all of the acts, and maybe that was one of the reasons the music didn't take off as much as I thought it might. When you went to see a live show and it was at like a live house, it didn't feel empty to me, but maybe to other people, they couldn't get their heads around it. But, you know, rock music's always a bit behind, isn't it? And I would encourage anyone that wants to get into music just to do it. If we can do it, anyone can do it. And you don't even need any ideas, just try stuff, and fun stuff can happen. And I suppose the short answer to that was we kept sending them songs. Like every week, we'd
Yeah.
send them one song and then keep following it up. And then I went to London. My wife at the time had uh, a work experience at Melody Maker. And then when
Oh,
yeah. And so I went to London with her for a week, but I had nothing to do when she was there. So I kept going in the DHR office and sort of said, "Oh, I'll take all the records." And then they'll be like, "Yeah, that'd be £150." But yeah, I don't quite have that. I'll have that one. But I'd keep like trying to make excuses to go in. I think that's sort of how we got signed. Do you remember that fanzine guy, the DDDD?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, he wrote about us, and apparently they read it also at Digital Hardcore as well, this fanzine, which was weird as well. Yeah. And then after a while, I got an email saying, "I don't suppose you'd be interested in releasing something." And initially I went, "Nah, maybe only 4 tracks," but we sort of got bullied. Not bullied, well, they said, "Do a whole
Yeah,
album or don't do it." So, and we
yeah. I
went,
think 'cause you'd sent, obviously, like you said, a lot of bits and pieces, CDRs or whatever, to the office. That, to be honest, you'd think these days you'd just assume things like that got put in a box and found their way over time towards a dustbin, which is maybe what should have happened. But shockingly, someone there must have opened them up and listened to it. I think maybe because there were so many with your name on that, that he was like, this guy must be serious about this. He must really, really want us to hear this music. So maybe, you know, sending things, drip feeding them these trashy little CDRs. Maybe that kind of made, you know, was something that got them to listen to it, you know, rather than if we'd have sent 12 songs on one CD or something, you know.
well,
It's
what I've learned through sort of this experience and later on, it is kind of who you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think they were in a bit of a weird spot, in that I think by the time we were working with them, I think they were already kind of um, on the decline. So, it's kind of, was it 2000, 2001? Kill Life came out.
Well,
Um,
I can work it out because we were on less than 20, but I was already over 20, which was another
yeah,
thing which we
another
weren't
one of
supposed.
Alex' little fibs.
Well, this comes on to the next question, actually.
I mean, I remember first time we spoke to him was when he called your mom's house. I was trying to think this. Did she answer the phone?
My mum did answer the phone. Now, my memory, I might have got this wrong, but I went to my mom. Mom, I might be getting a call today. Uh, if someone like asks for me, it's important. And I didn't say anything more. And then apparently he went, "Hello, is Fidel Villeneuve there?" And my mum went, "Martin, some weirdos on the phone for you."
But yeah, it was, yeah, he called up. We had a very strange conversation because let's not lie. I know, opinions may have changed over the years, but at the time, we loved Atari Teenage
Oh
Riot.
yeah.
We did, didn't we? We absolutely loved them. And the thoughts, and that was, I think the end goal of anything we did was to be signed to DHR. And, they were kind of, Ali, Carl Crack, Haneen, Nick Endo were kind of like, I don't want to go as far as to say superheroes, but I certainly held them in the same regard as I held Public Enemy and Ice T and a lot of these other people that were kind of, I grew up being a huge fan of. At that point, there was no one other than Blues Explosion who we listened to a lot. There was
Mm.
no one else we listened to as much as ATR and some of the other people on the roster.
Who of
But
course did make a song together. I don't know. Can you think what was it about that attracted you to him? For me, it was like all this music that I liked, but it wasn't. But it was kind of new and exciting, and anyone could have a go at it. I thought, and it didn't sound like anything else. But it wasn't like electronic music. Like it wasn't like dance. It wasn't like our club, and it wasn't like rock. It was like I genuinely thought it was going to take over the world, but that's not why I liked it. It was just really exciting, like nothing that had happened before.
See, it didn't sound like when I think of electronic music, I think of, kind of, yeah, dance music, techno, house, um, all these things that are very repetitive, um, and kind of don't really have the energy of kind of say punk or something like that. Or certainly at the time that wasn't my viewpoint. And hearing the first thing I heard was from you playing me the Future of War, um, which I mean, is the best thing they made by
A
quite a
country
long
mile,
stretch.
yeah.
Yeah, but it was kind of, without wanting to sound over the top and cliched, it was life changing. Hearing what they were doing, which was not really like what anyone else were doing. Certainly, way more loud, aggressive, chaotic, um, fun. It's kind of everything. As much as it was super aggressive and kind of political in kind of Alex sloganeering kind of way, political in kind of the same way that MIA is, like kind of chanting, "Oh, Google are going to get us" or whatever. It's kind of, it had a real fun element to it as well. I think a lot of the samples they used, a lot of the silly choices they made in the songs. I'd like to think they were intentionally uh, adding a bit of humour. But yeah, just genuinely sounded like nothing else that was around that I was aware of at the time. Anyway.
It says, "Is Alec Empire as full of is he as full of himself in person as he is in the DHR magazine with all the self-aggrandizing interviews and such?"
Oh God, I moved house recently, and kind of went up to the attic to clear a load of stuff out, um, and found some boxes that I hadn't seen since I moved to where I had been living 10 years prior, and I probably hadn't looked inside the boxes for another 10 years prior to that. And I found the DHR paper. I
Yeah, I
think
remember that.
DHR newspaper number 2, and I read the entire thing. And I've got to say, a lot of it was obviously Alec Empire interviewing himself, kind of asking himself questions, then giving like vague answers to the questions that he seems looked to me like he posed himself. It was really quite weird. And yeah, just yeah, he's an interesting character.
Well,
But
for me, that was all part of the show because you never knew what he was going to say, and you knew it'd probably be stupid, but it was always different. And in a
yeah,
weird way, I was looking forward to it. The first time I saw him was at the garage in Highbury, and someone was saying, "Hey, Alex, stop the show! Everyone's stealing the merch. Everyone's stealing the records." And he went, "No, the Atari Teenage Rat is about spreading the frequency.
Not selling the frequency.
Here's the next song." And then they started, and then everyone got on the stage and started trying to nick the samplers. And he went, "Oh no, that's not okay in actual fact." So I don't...
I couldn't tell you how many times we actually met the guy, but I remember I was speaking to him on the phone that day because that was a significant moment. But I couldn't tell you anything that we spoke about. So now we kind of took it in turn speaking to him. In fact, actually, I can tell you one thing that I spoke to him about, and it's something that because I actually listened to some of the album last night for the first time in I couldn't tell you how long, trying to kind of jog my memory on a few things. And one of the things I said to him was, "The songs that we've sped up, can we slow back down again?" And he was having none of it. He
Yeah.
liked that because, again, I don't know how many people know this, but obviously the songs with vocals on were kind of not loads slower, but they were certainly slower. But there was a function on the minidisc player which we used as like a hard disc recorder that we used to mix down to, that you could speed it up by 1% or 2% or +1 and +2. I'm not
I
sure
remember it
exactly.
being +2, but I don't know if that was a percent. It was quite a lot more than that because
Yeah,
it's the GMTV song. I remember that being something like 167 BPM, which is clearly not on the record.
yeah.
So it's like,
It is kind of ridiculously fast to the point where it kind of is a detriment to the songs. I think it's kind
well,
of, I suppose, when if you speed a song up, that's kind of you decide to play faster. I suppose that's one thing, but I think because they'd been played in a certain way and then we're just sped up, it kind of there's things that kind of I think you just maybe it's to my ears because I know the backstory or whatever, but they definitely sound too fast.
well, that's the thing because I did a podcast about the Fall, weirdly, and
Yeah, I listened to that.
they played some of my stuff, and they introduced me as like me from digital hardcore, and I went, "Oh no." That was the first time I'd
Yeah.
heard it for years and years. And I was, uh, yeah, but it was so long ago. It kind of
Yeah,
annoyed me that because
strange when.
well,
Sorry.
the stuff we did later, I think was much better.
Yeah,
And
way.
but no one heard it, like the stuff on D
Yeah.
Trash, and that we gave that to Pete Lawton in the DHR office, and I think you were there, and we had to and we were like being told off. Pete Lawton was sort of Alec Empire's partner in the thing, and he used to manage Spandau Ballet, and he
You
used
need
to.
you need to clarify that.
Well, not no, sorry, not yeah, a business partner is what
Yeah,
I mean,
and he
and
was another interesting character, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd love to know how they met and how things came about, or whether he was just someone that convinced Alec to kind of that he had a business brain or some contact or something. Again, I know very little about him other than our few interactions, but he was, yeah, different.
he reminds me of so many other people I've met in the music
Yeah.
industry, or there's someone in Japan who he really reminds me of as well. And it's just like, how do these people? Why do they get into music? I don't know.
See, I always imagine Pete Lawton every day when he closed the door behind him at the DHR office, thinking, "Oh, thank God, I haven't got to listen to any of that music or think about it until 9 a.m. tomorrow."
Well,
He just didn't seem like he had any interest in any
no.
of it at all.
Well, he told me to basically get guitars and drums and make a proper band, and then it was like, that's
Right.
fine, but why on this label of all labels? You just clearly have not understood what
Yeah.
I'm
I thought they
understanding.
were, yeah, I thought they were very anti like the traditional rock band or whatever. I
But
know
then
they obviously
it was
all
only a
those
few
groups.
years later that Alec sort of started playing with a sort of a band, didn't he? Like
Yeah, see, it
Intelligence
was
and
kind of
Sacrifice.
yeah, I'm aware we've kind of jumped all over the place here, but
Yeah.
but I suppose we haven't spoke about this probably ever. But yeah, it's kind of I remember hearing. Obviously, we were huge fans of what they did at a certain point. I remember kind of they brought out 60-second Wipeout, which was a bit of a letdown, bar no success, and maybe Ghost Chase.
Well,
Um,
we liked it when they said dealing with the devil, and then
oh yeah, yeah,
we like that. No,
like that.
we bought that on the day it came out, and I was smoking
Yeah,
really stinky French cigarettes, thinking I was all continental. We went to a Greasy Spoon, put it on, listened to it like 9 a.m. Mike Lloyd's music,
yeah.
and it was really we were so disappointed, weren't we?
Yeah, because I think you bought it on vinyl, I bought it on CD, and then yeah, we must have gone and listened to the CD in the Greasy Spoon, and yeah, it was kind of yeah. All I could hear for years was like 909 snares on that album. That's kind of a lot of what made ATR what they were to me was missing on that album, and it was kind of way more like a rock record, more of a like, traditional rock record, which might seem weird to people. But it's kind of no surprise that after that he started sampling Pantera riffs and doing things in a much more. Oh, and of course after that, in fact, around the time that we released was when they did that terrible song with Tom Morello, which was
Oh
a
yeah.
real low point in their discography. It's kind of. Can you think of a worse ATR song than Rage?
Um. Well,
No, you can't, can you? Because the
I
one,
reckon there must be. Well, we're gonna have to stop and have a break for a minute because I'm running out of time, and we'll have to do it in bits. But I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Okay.